My friend missed our Hawaii vacation because TSA stopped her for a weed pen. Now she wants us to pay her back, but I refuse. Should I just do it to keep the peace? Throw away and change some details. I don't think anyone involved is on Reddit, but I'm paranoid LOL. Me and 3 friends planned a vacation to Hawaii. We booked the flight, hotel, and car together for a discount, and then split the costs 4 ways. So we each paid roughly $800. We also booked a couple things to do there, totaling around $250. The day of the flight, we all arrive at the airport and start going through TSA. One of my friends, I call her Sarah, got stopped because she had a weed pen in her bag. She says she just forgot it was in there and didn't intentionally bring it, but it doesn't really matter either way. TSA ended up calling airport PD, and Sarah was not allowed to board the flight. Weed is not legal in our state. She wasn't arrested, but she was given a ticket and court date and not allowed through security. So that obviously the rest of us still got on the plane because we're looking forward to our vacation. Now we're back and Sarah is mad at all of us for going and wants us to pay her back for her portion of things since she couldn't go. But I don't think we should have to. It's not our fault she wasn't allowed to fly and I didn't budget for paying her half as well. She's also mad because the airport is 1 hour from our home city, and we didn't give her the keys to the car, so she had to pay for an Uber home. We didn't say she couldn't have the keys. It's just that no one thought to give her the keys to Matt's car when it was all going down. One of my friends says we should just pay her to keep the peace, but I don't think we should have to. Matt also thinks we shouldn't have to pay her. If we split her costs, it would be about $350 each. I could technically afford it, but I'm working on paying off my credit card. And that's about the same amount I put toward the credit card each month, so it would put me a month behind on my plan to pay off my last credit card. I was a little irresponsible in my early 20s. If I refuse to pay her back? And even if I'm not the should I just do it anyway to keep the peace? Update 1. I didn't expect things to get so crazy after my original post, but here we are. I figured I'd post an update because I've been sitting with this situation, and everything's just gotten messier. I really thought that when we got back from Hawaii, things would die down and we could all move on, but Sarah is still coming after us for money. And now it's gone way beyond just her being mad. Let me start from the beginning again, just to give some context. We had this amazing trip planned to Hawaii for months. We were all super excited about it, especially because we got a great deal by splitting the cost 4 ways. Flights, hotels, car rentals, it was all taken care of, and we each paid our share up front. We even booked a few activities together, like a snorkeling trip and a helicopter tour, which I was personally super stoked about. Then the day of the trip came, and everything went sideways. TSA stopped Sarah because she's got a weed pen in her bag. Now, weed isn't legal in our state, and honestly, I'm still not sure if she forgot it was in there or just thought she could sneak it through. But either way, it didn't matter. TSA called the airport police, and Sarah wasn't allowed to board the flight with us. She wasn't arrested, but they gave her a ticket, a court date, and sent her on her way. At the time, the rest of us were in total shock. None of us knew what to do. I remember standing there with Matt and Jenna just staring at each other like, what the hell do we do now? Sarah's over there dealing with the cops, and we've got a flight to catch. We're texting each other in our group chat while standing just a few feet apart, debating whether we should wait for her, try to figure something out, or get on the plane. I know this is going to sound cold, but we decided to go ahead with the trip. We had already paid for everything, and missing the flight would have been a nightmare for us all financially. I mean, we're talking about losing out on thousands of dollars between the flights, hotel, and activities. We couldn't afford to just eat that cost, especially since it wasn't our mistake. So we boarded the flight, and Sarah had to deal with her situation. Looking back, maybe we should have at least tried to work something out at the airport, but in the heat of the moment, none of us really knew what to do. The whole situation felt surreal. We didn't leave Sarah stranded on purpose. She could have asked for the car keys if she wanted to drive home, but I guess with all the chaos, none of us thought to hand them over. I feel bad about that now, but at the time, it was just panic mode for everyone. Anyway, we had the trip. It was incredible. Hawaii was everything I dreamed it would be, perfect weather, stunning views, amazing food. But I couldn't fully enjoy it because in the back of my mind, I knew this situation with Sarah was still brewing. I didn't even post any pictures on Instagram because I felt guilty about the whole thing. Fast forward to when we got home and Sarah's still pissed. I mean, really pissed. She texted us in the group chat saying she felt betrayed that we went without her and left her behind. I explained that we didn't know what else to do and that we'd already paid for everything, but she wasn't having it. Then she dropped the bomb. She wanted us to pay her back for her share of the trip, $800 for the flights, hotel, and car, plus another $250 for the activities she couldn't do. That's over $1,000 she's asking us to split 3 ways, which would be about $350 each. Now, I know this is where things get tricky. Part of me feels bad because she didn't get to come on the trip, but at the same time, it's not our fault she couldn't board the plane. She made the decision to bring the weed pen, whether she realized it was in her bag or not, and that's why she missed the flight. We didn't kick her off the trip, and we didn't cause her to get stopped by TSA. Why should we be responsible for paying her back? I talked to Matt and Jenna about it separately, and here's where we stand. Matt's 100% on my side. He thinks it's ridiculous that Sarah's asking us for money and says we shouldn't pay her a dime. Jenna, on the other hand, is kind of on the fence. She says she gets why Sarah's upset and thinks maybe we should just pay her to keep the peace, but she also admits that it's not really our responsibility. I went back and forth with Sarah over text for days, trying to explain my side, but she wasn't hearing any of it. She kept saying that we should have waited for her or at least given her the car keys so she didn't have to Uber home. But honestly, in the moment, we were all so stressed and focused on making the flight that no one even thought about the car. Plus, it wasn't my car to give her anyway, it was Matt's, and he was just as frazzled as I was. Then things got worse. Sarah started talking about how her mom thought we were being bad friends, and how we should have done more to help her out at the airport. At this point, I'm wondering why her mom's even involved, but I guess she told her everything. Sarah said that her mom wanted her to take us to small claims court to get her money back, which blew my mind. I never thought she'd actually go that far, but she said she was seriously considering it. That's when I started feeling really conflicted. I don't want to lose a friend over this, especially someone I've known since high school, but the idea of paying her back just feels wrong. It's not like we deliberately excluded her from the trip. She got caught with something illegal, and that's why she couldn't go. If I pay her back now, am I just enabling her to make irresponsible decisions in the future? What if something like this happens again? Plus, the $350 she's asking for is the same amount I've been putting toward paying off my credit card debt every month, and I'm finally so close to being debt-free. This whole situation is giving me so much anxiety, and I don't know what to do. To make matters worse, Sarah's been posting passive-aggressive stuff on social media. She hasn't called us out directly, but it's pretty clear the posts are about us. Stuff like, "It's crazy how some people show their true colors when you need them most," and "You think you know someone until they screw you over." I'm not going to lie. Seeing those posts made me feel sick to my stomach. It's one thing to be upset in private, but to air it all out online like that? It feels so petty and high school. The whole situation is just a mess. I've been avoiding hanging out with Matt and Jenna because I know they're just as tired of this drama as I am, but none of us can agree on how to handle it. Matt says we should cut Sarah off entirely if she's really going to take us to court over this, but I don't know if I'm ready to go that far. Jenna's been trying to mediate between us, but it's not working. Every time we talk about it, it feels like we're going in circles. At this point, I just don't know what to do. Am I being stubborn by refusing to pay her back? Should I just bite the bullet and give her the money to end the drama? Or should I stand my ground and risk losing a friend over this? Honestly, I don't even know if I want to be friends with Sarah anymore after how she's handled this. But part of me feels like I'm overreacting. I've been losing sleep over this for weeks, and I'm starting to think maybe I should just give in and pay her off so we can all move on with our lives. But then again, why should I have to pay for a mistake I didn't make? It's a lose-lose situation no matter how I look at it. Update 2. All right, so things have somehow gotten even worse, and I'm not sure how to feel about all this. After my last update, I genuinely thought maybe Sarah would cool down and realize how ridiculous this whole situation was, but nope. Instead, she's doubled down and is now taking us to small claims court. I honestly can't believe it's come to this. Let me give you a rundown of how we got here. After weeks of Sarah sending passive-aggressive texts and posting on Instagram about how we're fake friends, I figured it might be a good idea to sit down and have an in-person conversation with her to clear the air. I know it sounds naive, but I really thought that maybe if we talked things through face-to-face, we could put this whole thing behind us. So I reached out to her and suggested we grab coffee and talk things out. At first, she didn't respond, and I thought she was going to ghost me. But a couple of hours later, she replied with a simple, "Fine." We met up at this local coffee shop we've been going to for years, and the tension was immediate. I could tell by the look on her face that she wasn't interested in resolving anything, but I tried to stay optimistic. I started off by apologizing again for not giving her the car keys at the airport. I explained how chaotic everything was, and that none of us had meant to leave her stranded. I also acknowledged that it must have been really frustrating for her to miss out on the trip, but I stood my ground about not owing her any money. She listened quietly while I talked, but I could tell she wasn't buying any of it. When I finished, she just stared at me for a minute before saying, "I don't care about your excuses. You left me behind and went on a vacation without me. A real friend wouldn't have done that." I was kind of taken aback. I mean, it's not like we wanted to leave her behind, but we had no choice. We weren't about to miss our flight and lose all the money we'd paid just because she got stopped by TSA. I tried to explain that again, but she cut me off and said, "It doesn't matter. You owe me the money. Period." And that's when I realized there was no reasoning with her. She didn't care about the circumstances, and she didn't care about our friendship. All she cared about was getting her money back, even though it was her fault she missed the trip in the first place. I told her as much, but she just scoffed and said, "We'll see what the judge thinks." And that's when she dropped the bombshell. She was taking me, Matt, and Jenna to small claims court to get her money back. I was completely floored. I knew she was upset, but I didn't think she'd actually go through with suing us. I tried to keep my cool and asked her if she was seriously going to drag us to court over this. Her response, "Yes, you left me no choice." After that, I just left. I couldn't sit there and argue with her anymore. I was so mad and frustrated that I didn't trust myself to keep talking without losing my temper. As soon as I got home, I called Matt and Jenna to let them know what had happened. Matt was furious. He couldn't believe she was taking this so far, and he said we should fight her in court if that's what she really wants. Jenna, on the other hand, was more conflicted. She's always been the peacekeeper in our group, and she said maybe we should just settle with Sarah to avoid the hassle of court, but even she admitted that Sarah was being unreasonable. A few days later, we all got served with papers. Sarah had officially filed a claim in small claims court for $1,050, the total amount she had paid for the trip and the activities we'd booked. I've never been sued before, so I was completely freaked out. I didn't even know where to start or what to do. Matt, of course, was ready to go full steam ahead and fight it, but Jenna was on the fence again. She kept saying that maybe we should just settle to avoid all the stress, but Matt and I both agreed that giving in would set a bad precedent. If we paid Sarah back, it would be like admitting we were in the wrong, and we didn't believe we were. So now we're prepping for court. I've been doing some research, and it seems like we have a pretty solid case. I mean, we didn't intentionally exclude her from the trip. She got stopped by TSA because she had a weed pen in her bag. That's not our fault. Plus, we paid for our share of the trip, and it's not like we can get a refund for the money we spent. Why should we have to pay for her mistake? I've been talking to Matt a lot, and he's been a huge help in keeping me calm. He's way more confident about going to court than I am, and he's even been joking about how ridiculous this whole situation is. He's convinced that the judge will side with us, and honestly, I hope he's right. But I'm still nervous. I've never been in a situation like this before, and the thought of going to court over something so petty is stressing me out. Jenna's still wavering. She hates confrontation, and I can tell she's really uncomfortable with the idea of going to court. She even brought up the idea of trying to negotiate with Sarah one more time before the court date, but Matt and I both shot that down. Sarah's made it clear that she's not interested in negotiating. She wants her money, and she's willing to take us to court to get it. The court date is in a few weeks, and honestly, I just want this whole thing to be over. I never thought a vacation to Hawaii could turn into such a nightmare, but here we are. It's been weeks of constant stress and anxiety, and I'm so tired of it. I've even started questioning whether I want to be friends with Sarah anymore. I mean, who takes their friends to court over something like this? But at the same time, part of me feels guilty. I know she's out a lot of money, and I know it sucks that she missed out on the trip, but it wasn't our fault. We didn't force her to bring a weed pen to the airport, and we didn't make the TSA stop her. We were just trying to go on a vacation that we'd all paid for. Is that really so terrible? I guess we'll find out in court. Well, the court case is officially over, and I can't believe what we found out. This whole time, Sarah has been lying to us about something huge, and it's completely blown my mind. I don't even know where to start, but I'll try to explain everything as best as I can. So, we went to court last week. I was super nervous, but Matt was totally calm and collected. Jenna was still anxious about the whole thing, but she agreed to come with us and see it through. We all showed up at the courthouse early, and when we saw Sarah sitting there with her mom, I could feel the tension immediately. She didn't even look at us when we walked in. The case itself was pretty straightforward. Sarah's lawyer argued that she was entitled to a refund because she didn't get to go on the trip, and they made it sound like we'd intentionally left her behind. They tried to frame it as if we were the ones who caused her to miss the flight, which was completely ridiculous. I was sitting there listening to them talk, and I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It was so twisted. When it was our turn to speak, Matt did most of the talking. He laid out the facts clearly. Sarah got stopped by TSA because of her weed pen. We didn't leave her on purpose, and we had no control over what happened. He also brought up the fact that none of the costs were refundable, so we were out just as much money as she was. Matt explained that we didn't make Sarah bring the weed pen, and it wasn't like we intentionally ditched her at the airport. We showed proof of our expenses and the non-refundable policies for the flights and activities. Matt was confident and clear, and I could tell the judge was listening. I was sitting there hoping that this would be the end of it, that once we presented the facts, the whole thing would just be over. But then something completely unexpected happened. During the hearing, Sarah's lawyer brought up something that none of us had even considered, a medical marijuana card. Apparently, Sarah had applied for one just days before the trip and had been approved. The problem was, she hadn't received her physical card in time for the flight, so she assumed she could bring the weed pen with her to the airport without any issues. Sarah knew about this all along and hadn't told us. She had the card in the system but didn't have the actual proof on her when she was stopped by TSA. That's why she wasn't arrested, just given a ticket and a court date. It was all because she jumped the gun and tried to use the card without having it physically with her. Hearing this, I was floored. I looked at Matt and Jenna, and they were just as shocked as I was. This whole time, Sarah had been making it seem like she'd accidentally forgotten the pen in her bag, but in reality, she had intentionally brought it because she thought her medical card would cover her. She never told us this. If she had, we might have understood her situation a little better, but instead she let us believe it was just a careless mistake. The judge asked Sarah why she hadn't mentioned the card earlier, and her answer was even more infuriating. She said she didn't think it mattered because it was just bad timing, that she didn't have the physical card on her. The judge, however, wasn't impressed by that answer. He pointed out that while medical marijuana is legal in some states, it's still illegal at the federal level, and trying to bring it through airport security without the proper documentation wasn't just bad timing, it was irresponsible. The revelation about the medical card changed everything. It became clear that Sarah hadn't been completely honest with us from the start. She knew she was taking a risk by bringing the weed pen, but instead of owning up to it, she tried to make it seem like she was just unlucky. I think that was the moment the judge started to side with us. After that, the judge asked us if we had anything else to say, and Matt stepped up again. He calmly explained that if Sarah had told us about her medical card and the situation beforehand, we might have been able to handle things differently. But because she kept us in the dark, we were left scrambling at the airport, unsure of what to do. Matt also pointed out that we weren't the ones who made the decision to stop her from flying. That was TSA. We had no control over the situation, and we shouldn't be held responsible for something that was entirely out of our hands. The judge seemed to agree. He wrapped things up quickly after that, and we all left the courtroom to wait for the decision. The tension was unbearable. I couldn't even look at Sarah or her mom while we were waiting. I was still so shocked by everything we had just learned. All this time, she'd been hiding this huge piece of information from us, and it completely changed the way I saw the whole situation. When the judge finally called us back in, I was holding my breath. He ruled in our favor. He said that while it was unfortunate Sarah missed the trip, it wasn't our fault, and we weren't obligated to pay her back for her share. He also mentioned that bringing a weed pen through TSA without the proper documentation was Sarah's responsibility, not ours, and that we couldn't be held liable for the consequences of her actions. Hearing that, I felt an immediate sense of relief. The whole ordeal was finally over, and we didn't have to pay Sarah back. But at the same time, I was still processing everything we had learned in court. Sarah had lied to us. She hadn't been honest about the weed pen or the medical card, and she had tried to make it seem like we were in the wrong. I couldn't believe that someone I had considered a close friend could be so manipulative. After the ruling, we left the courthouse without saying a word to Sarah. She and her mom were still standing there talking to their lawyer, but none of us had the energy to confront her. I didn't even want to think about what she was going to say next. I just wanted to go home and put this whole nightmare behind me. Later that night, Jenna called me. She was as upset as I was about the whole thing. She kept saying she couldn't believe Sarah had hidden something so important from us, and that she felt like she didn't even know her anymore. Matt, on the other hand, was just glad it was over. He said he had a feeling Sarah wasn't telling us the whole truth from the beginning, and now we finally knew what had really happened. I haven't spoken to Sarah since the court case, and honestly, I don't think I ever will. I can't trust her after everything that's happened. The way she handled this situation, hiding the truth, dragging us to court, and trying to make us feel guilty for something that wasn't our fault, has completely destroyed our friendship. I know some people might think I'm overreacting, but trust is a big deal to me, and once it's broken, it's hard to get back. As for Matt and Jenna, we've all agreed to just move on. The whole experience has been exhausting, and none of us want to dwell on it any longer. We're planning another trip for next year, but this time, it's just going to be the three of us. No more drama, no more lies, just a good time with people we can trust. So, that's the end of the saga. I never thought a vacation would lead to losing a friend and going to court, but life is unpredictable, I guess. I've learned a lot from this whole experience, mainly that honesty is everything in a friendship. If Sarah had been upfront with us from the start, maybe things would have turned out differently. But as it stands, I'm glad we stood our ground, and I'm ready to move forward. Thanks for all the advice and support throughout this mess. It's been a wild ride, but at least it's finally over.